Hi there, BookTube! My name is Christina and today I'm back with my at this point series of videos about the new releases of the season that I'm most anticipating. So actually this autumn is kind of full of releases, also because a lot of releases they've been pushed back till autumn, so I hope that they will come out eventually in this season. And I have a bunch of books, I don't know how many exactly, but there is a bunch of fantasies mainly. And without further ado, let me get into the releases. Some of them are already out because, well, I'm late with this video because we're already in autumn. But anyhow, let me get directly to the titles. The first book that I have here is actually historical fiction, and this one is 50 Words for Rain, and it has already been released. It was released on the 1st of September, if I'm remembering correctly, and this is a historical fiction about mainly two characters, from what I get, that are kind of half brother and sister, and the main protagonist is half Japanese and half African American, I believe. And it is set around in the first years after the Second World War, and it covers the whole lifespan of the characters, probably. So it's a bit different. It deals with identity, with what it means being half. It deals with family bonds and with tradition and how a country changes after war. So it has a lot of very important topics, and I'm quite curious to get to it sooner or later. It has a beautiful title, it has a beautiful cover, and dealing with Japan on some degree, I really want to read it one day. Next book that I have here is a young adult fantasy, and it's titled Fable. And Fable apparently is the main protagonist of this story, who is a 17-year-old girl. And the reason why I'm anticipating this one is because, from what I got, it is like kinda adventures in the sea, on the sea. In the sea, because this is a girl who lost her mother, and her father kinda ditches her on this island where only thieves and kinda criminals live. Nicely done, Daddy. And so her goal is to actually find her father, to take revenge and to claim her rightful place in the world. But meanwhile, she of course has to do with, I believe, with pirates and adventures and storms and just like the typical pirate sea kind of setting that I've not read enough lately, so I really want to read something like that. And this already is out. It was published on, again, September the 1st, I believe. Next we have a book that has been released on September 15th, and it's Piranesi. And this is kind of mythological, kind of literary fiction, and I don't know exactly how to describe it to it, so I will read just a part from the synopsis. It is about this main character who lives in a house that is kind of a labyrinth, I believe, and everything happens there, and suddenly he discovers that he's not the only one being there, and some mystery unravels. But it's also mythological, and the cover really makes me think about Greek mythology, so I'm not sure. Goodreads says at the end that it's for readers of Neil Gaiman's The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which I've never read, and fans of Miller's Circe, that I've read and enjoyed. Piranesi introduces an astonishing new world, an infinite labyrinth full of startling images and surreal beauty, haunted by the tides and the clouds. So this is so vague, but it definitely piqued my interest, so maybe in the future I will be able to read this one. Moving on to September the 29th, we have a bunch of releases. I'm filming this video on September the 21st, which means that for me it's in the future, but when the video will be released it will probably like later. So For you, it has already happened, the magic of pre-filming. And the first book that I have here is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. And Naomi Novik is a very well-loved author, and I own Uprooted by her, but I've not read it. I'm planning maybe this winter to read her book, and also Spinning Silver, I believe. So this book, from what I got from the synopsis, it is actually a fantasy young adult, but probably it's kind of dark academia a little bit, because we're following Elle, who attends this school that kind of, I don't know, it's like a survival school, because you have powers, but the point is to survive, because if you don't have good grades and if you don't pass the test, then you die, literally. So, I don't know, we have this protagonist who has amazing powers, but they're too amazing, so her power kind of risks to kill everyone, so I don't know if she can use those powers or not. But for sure, the cover is beautiful, and it's an interesting concept. It's been a while since I've read something set in a school setting, so I would love to read it one day. Apparently, on the 29th, we will have Hollowpox 2, and Hollowpox is the third book in the Morgan Krauss trials. So it's the first book is Nevermore, and so on. This is the third one, and it was supposed to come out this summer, but that hasn't happened. So now I'm waiting for it to come out finally, so maybe it will come out this autumn, finger crossed, and then I will for sure read it as soon as possible. And the last book released on September 29th is Burning Roses. It has an amazingly beautiful cover, actually, and it's an LGBTQ plus retelling. From what I see on Goodreads, it's like a retelling for Red Riding Hood and like the Archer meeting together, and they're two women, and apparently they're like in their middle ages, so they're not young adults, which I think is amazing. Because, as you know, I kind of moved on from young adult, not as a whole genre, but just that not being a young adult anymore, I really want to relate to more characters that are adults and that have adventures too, not only literary fiction, but also fantasies with people of a normal age, not only teenagers. And I appreciate all of the books out there for the teenagers. They are precious for teenagers, but we need something more, so I'm always glad to see this kind of content. So we will be following their adventures, and it says that Burning Roses is a gorgeous fairy tale of love and family, of demons and lost gods that rise in 2020. So now is the moment, and fingers crossed it will be a good one. Next book is a non-fiction and kinda autobiographical one, I believe, and it's 10 Steps to Lynette by Hannah Gadsby. And this book is one of those that's been pushed like far and far and far this year because of all of what's happening in the world, and maybe now it will finally be released. And this is an LGBTQ plus kind of story, autobiographical story written by Hannah Gadsby, and if you can, you may actually watch her stand-up comedy on Netflix. It's called Lynette, and she has a second one also out there, and I really recommend you to listen to it because that's a unique kind of stand-up comedy. When I watched it, I wasn't expecting it, and it was, I don't know, it was a mixture of funny and then just heartbreaking. So there were moments when I was laughing and moments when I felt like so bad, and I was kind of empathizing so much with the comedian on the stage that I was feeling bad for her, and I was angry because of what she was talking about. So I think that the book can be actually very impactful, but before buying it you actually may watch the show and see if it's okay with you to listen to that kind of humor and also to listen to that kind of serious talk, because there is a bunch of very serious things and they are very important, and that's one of the reasons why still today everyone is kind of fighting and everyone has to show support to the LGBTQ plus community, because we need it. And please watch the show, and I hope that the book will be even better with even more insight to the story, so I hope that it will be a good one. Next one is a book that will be released on October the 6th, and it's a fantasy YA that's called Blazeroff Games. It has this very colorful and rose kind of cover that I really enjoy because it's pink rose but also very impactful and very kind of feisty and fight-like, so I really appreciate it. And this, from what I see on Goodreads, is actually experience the World Cup with dragons in this debut fantasy set in an alternate contemporary world in which riders and their steeds competes in an international sports tournament. And it gives me like a vibe of, I don't know, a little bit of Hunger Games mixed with a Quidditch Cup. I don't know if it makes sense. I don't think that it will be as intense as the Hunger Games, and the sport part of it makes me think about a Quidditch Cup, so who knows, but I hope that it will be a good one to enjoy and to appreciate, because I'm not big on sports, like not in real life nor in my readings. I seldom read something about sports, but maybe this can be an exception. And one more book will be released on October the 6th, and it's Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. And this one is the third book that the author publishes in the Practical Magic series, but technically it's the very first book, so she's publishing them like backwards. The first book, Practical Magic, is set like in the 90s, I believe, at this point. Then the second book that she released is kind of set in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I don't remember. And this one talks about the original Owens sister, the original Owens, and it is set in 1680. So we're going back in time, so we know more and more and more about this family, and I'm very curious to read about Mary. Oh, was it Maria? Maria, not Mary. It's Maria Owens, and I'm very excited to know more about her life, because we have snippets of things told about her, like through other characters, but I really want to see her life. It probably will be very hard for me because 1680s witches, United States, it won't end like in a good way, but still I really want to see what kind of twist the author will give to the story. And if you don't want to read the books, then you can always watch the movie, the old movie with Sandra Bullock and oh my god, Nicole Kidman. I was forgetting her name. And it's an old movie, but it's still so good. It's a bit different from the book, but it can be a great like kind of sample before getting into the books. On October 13th we have a bunch of releases, and the first one is The Once and Future Witches. It has this interesting kind of cover, and we are following, like, we are in the year 1893, after the Salem trials and everything, and we're following the story of these sisters, and they join the suffragists of New Salem, and the women movement starts to mingle a little bit with the witches movement and something will for sure happen. And I just love this idea. I want to see what kind of concept the author will be pursuing in this book. Again, on October 13th, we have one more fantasy young adult with LGBTQ+ parts, and it is Beyond the Ruby Veil. This book confuses me a little bit because it has kind of Italian names in it, so I don't know about the setting, but the concept is kind of unique. So we are living in this kind of kingdom where water is created by a mysterious being, and if you present some kind of marks on your body, then you have to surrender to this being in order to be killed, because the being then creates water from your blood, something like that. And our main protagonist, she actually has this kind of signs, but she wants to hide it. But then on her wedding day, everything is revealed, and she ends up killing this creature. So now the whole realm has no more water, and she has to find a solution to the problem. So I don't know what will happen and where it will bring us, but the premise seems kind of unique, so it piqued my interest, definitely. On October 13th, we have one more historical kind of fantasy, and it's The Midnight Bargain. In this one, we are following Beatrice, who is our main protagonist, and she wants to become a magus. But unfortunately, she cannot, because she's supposed to marry someone in order to elevate her social status, because her family has great debts and she needs to marry someone rich. So she has to choose between being a magus and being a wife and having money, pretty much. And Goodreads says that the more Beatrice is entangled with the Lavan siblings, the harder her decision becomes. If she casts the spell to become a magus, she will devastate her family and lose the only man to ever see her for who she is. But if she marries, even for love, she will sacrifice her magic, her identity, and her dreams. But how can she choose just one, knowing she will forever regret the path not taken? So, I don't know you, but it seems something worth reading. So I hope that I will enjoy it in the future if I will be able to read it. The last one to be released on October 13th, a day when everything is kind of released apparently, is The Lightbringer, and it's the third book in the Imperium trilogy. I read the first one this year, I bought the second one for my birthday, so I hope to read it this year or the next one, and that's the third book. So of course I put it here, even if it's not the first one, because I highly anticipated it, because the first one was something that I enjoyed, and I hope that the second and the third one won't disappoint, because it's a trilogy, so this is supposed to be the last book. Finger crossed, because recently we have this habit of telling that something is over and then adding more books, and I don't see the point. Please, let's start finishing things properly without dragging them out. Next is a release that will happen on October the 20th. I had like nothing in my mind for a second. The 20th is Phoenix Extravagant, with this very colorful kind of cover, and this one is a science fiction / fantasy LGBTQ+ story. This book has non-binary characters, so we will address the main protagonist with them, and Goodreads explains that it has to do with art and painting, and just let me read, because from what I get here it has a very rich world building, so I have high hopes. It says, Dragons, Art and Revolution. Jen Jebi, sorry for the pronunciation, isn't a fighter or a subversive. They just want to paint. One day they're jobless and desperate. The next, Jebi finds themselves recruited by the Ministry of Armor to paint the mystical sigils that animate the occupying government's automaton soldiers. But when Jebi discovers the depths of the government's horrifying crimes, and the awful source of the magical pigments they use, they find they can no longer stay out of politics. What they can do is steal Arazi, the Ministry's mighty dragon automaton, and find a way to fight. So, this is for sure unique. I've never read a premise like that, so I have very high hopes. Again, on October 20th, we have one more fantasy young adult, and it's Among the Beasts and Briars, and I really enjoy this cover. It's simple yet very impactful, and this is the story of Ceres. Ceres is living in this kind of kingdom that knows no disease or famine or nothing like that. The peace is everlasting, but while everything is good in the kingdom, there are the woods around that are darker and darker and that are getting closer and closer to the kingdom. So I believe that something happens, and when there is a change of the ruler in the kingdom, she's forced to escape and find the entity with which the king of the realm made a pact in the past, so that the kingdom will be protected from the woods. At least this is what I remember about the synopsis, but don't quote me on it. However, it seems kind of like a fairy tale kind of story, so I think that I may enjoy it. On October 27th, there will be a release that I'm anticipating so much, I can't wait, and it's the Tea Dragon Tapestry. I mean, this is the conclusion of the Tea Dragon trilogy. I believe that it's a conclusion. And here we will following again the characters that we met in our first book, and the cover is so autumnal. I can't wait to have it in my hands and to read it. This is such a comfort read for me. It's so beautiful and soothing and lovely. It's just everything. And if you love tea, if you love fluffy, good and beautiful things, you just definitely have to give a try to this graphic novel because it's simply beautiful and heartwarming. The last but one book is actually one that will be released on November 17th, so we're moving to November here, and it's These Violent Delights. This book has a premise that immediately caught my attention because it's a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but it is set in Shanghai in 1926, and it deals with kinda like gangs, street gangs or something like that, mafia, those kind of vibes. So I'm really curious to see what will happen with the story with that kind of setting, and how the author will decide what parts she will keep, what parts she will change. So I'm in for it, and I've rarely read something set in that historical period and Shanghai, moreover. So we will see how it will go. I have very high hopes, and I hope that I won't be disappointed at the end. And the very last book that I have here is Ruin Song, that will be released on November 24th, and this one is an LGBTQ+ fantasy story, and it says on Goodreads that her voice was her prison, now it's her weapon. With a world where magic is sung, a powerful mage named Cadence has been forced to torture her country's disgraced nobility at her ruthless queen's bidding. But when she is reunited with her childhood friend, a noble woman with ties to the underground rebellion, she must finally make a choice. Take a stand to free their country from oppression, or follow the queen's footsteps and become a monster herself. So, again, a great premise. Apparently there will be a romance, there will be like a revolution, and it's LGBTQ+, so that's a plus for sure. And the cover is simple yet beautiful. So again, I have very high hopes for this one. And this concludes this long video about all of the fall releases about which I'm excited. I've not kind of watched too much into the releases of November, to be sincere, and I've not started collecting yet the new releases for December and winter, but even like that, I believe that these are more than enough titles. Just let me know if you're anticipating some of these, or if you're planning to read them, or if you've already read some of these because of arcs or because they've already been released, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye! Ciao!